All right. Hey, everybody. So it's take two.
No, you're still not live. Okay, now we're live.
Now we're live.
Sorry about that, guys. We had some technical difficulties. We had to move our location today.
I know. Take two. So you missed our wonderful discussion in the beginning. Well, we'll do it again. Welcome to the Hoop Podcast. We are here with
and MoneyWi's Wednesday.
Oh,
yeah.
I was getting there. I love these guys so much. They're so good with rolling with the punches. My name is Andre Harris, Community Development Manager here at Envision Credit Union. With me today is Miss Kelly Walter.
Hey, guys.
And Miss Kelly Merck.
Hey.
And we're here today to talk to you about going into 2025, a new year, a new you, and new finances.
New vision for your financial future.
Exactly.
It sounds so cliche, but yet there's a lot of really great tips I know that you're probably going to bring us today about how can we reflect back on the year and roll into the new year without making some of the mistakes, and then maybe keep doing what's working for us.
Exactly, for sure. Because no matter how you did, not everything was great, not everything was perfect, myself included. So there's always room to grow and improve going into the new year. And this is a great time to think back and reflect on what you did during the year, how you spent your money, and then what your goals are for the future. And so we're going to get into all that good stuff. And so I'm going to ask you guys once again, and I'll definitely start off, but we were talking before the cameras came on. We talked about our irresponsible purchases of 2024, and I mentioned mine was I bought a couple of pairs of shoes this year, about 3 or 4 pairs of shoes, and not just any shoes, but Jordans, which are at least $200 a piece, right? And it hurts because I'm cheap. I'm a cheap guy. It hurts my soul, but I really wanted them. I didn't grow up being able to afford Jordans, and so this year I said, you know what, I deserve it. I deserve to go out and buy a nice pair of shoes for myself. So I did.
Good for you.
Yeah.
But you also, if I know you well, you also kind of, it's not like you busted the budget for that too. Like
For
it's
sure.
like you kind of made room to make it work.
Exactly. Made room to make it work. Looked at what we had left over. Could we do this, in a feasible way? So we definitely were responsible about it, but it was impulsive. I'll say that. It was definitely impulsive.
So do you regret any of the sneakers you bought? So you wear them and you're like, I made the right choice.
Do you wear them?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you wearing them now?
I'm not wearing them.
It's Wear Wednesday too with our sweaters.
It didn't match. It didn't match.
Yeah, see,
So
it's
I
all
gotta-
about that. Yeah.
I gotta match,
What about
right?
you, Kel?
I didn't buy anything big. I bought lots of little things. So I didn't put it on a credit card. So not irresponsible. Could I have saved that money? Sure. But I do like to buy stuff.
Yeah.
I like to buy lots of little stuff. He bought big things.
Mhm.
I like to buy lots of little things, especially if it's for the grandkids. And then when it's for the grandkids, it doesn't matter.
All bets are off.
Yeah. I get it.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I don't think I had any one like major irresponsible purchase, but one thing that is always a consistent, I don't know, like glaring thing that we waste money on in my household is eating out. We don't necessarily go to restaurants a lot, but a lot of times the busyness of the week or the day will catch up with us, and it's like, all right, we're going to swing by and carry out home.
Yeah.
But so, which can be impulsive, but it's because I'm not planning ahead.
Sure.
And so I'm very mindful of that as we come into the end of the year of going, what could I have done differently to save my family a bit more money or to be more on point with some of our goals? And I really think it's being more intentional about planning ahead. I'm not great at that. There's certain things that I'm a great planner on, but I guess the priorities of life just kind of get you. And so that one is probably one that's really, I feel like a little bit of a irresponsibility and my part. So I'd like to do better at that.
Well, I'm going to offer you a little grace because with our positions and with what we do we're constantly on the go. So it's really hard to plan ahead because a lot of times we don't know what our day looks like. And that's true for a lot of people out there. And so it's hard. It's hard to plan ahead.
Thank you for making people better about that.
And kids going in 5 different directions every night. There's something different. I don't know how you guys do that because I had one and that's about all I can do.
To our members who have multiple children, kudos to you, man. For running the rat race. I mean, life, life is tough. Life is hard, but I'm glad that whoever's listening or watching can carve out a little bit of time to go, how can I be a little bit more intentional in 2025 to stay on track for my goals?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those goals. Let's talk about going into 2025 with better habits or reinforcing the habits that you've already established. So one thing, when I do workshops, webinars, whatever you may call it, I always start with goals. And the reason I do that is because it's a lot easier to start with the positive than the negative. A lot of times when you talk to people about budgeting, when you talk to people about saving money, we also talk about what you have to give up, right? We talk about what you have to sacrifice in order to achieve those goals. But what if we started with what we're trying to accomplish, right? And so one of the things, and I'm sure you've heard about it before, is a SMART goal.
Mhm.
Do you remember? I'm going to quiz you. Do
Oh,
you remember
no,
what SMART
you're
goals
not. You are not.
Come on, give me your best shot.
Oh. Manageable,
Okay, that's one.
attainable.
Start off.
Oh, specific. I'm sorry, I forgot the S.
You got it,
Specific,
you got it.
manageable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive.
There you go.
Yes.
You got
I'm over
it.
here trying to do like
But
sign
wait,
language.
she helped me out a little bit. Yeah.
I know she was reminding me of the sign. Perfect. Yes. So there's different ways to say it, but specific, measurable, achievable, relevant or relatable, and time bound. And
I
so
think it was realistic.
it can be realistic. So realistic, relevant.
It could be anything that starts with
I
an
guess.
R.
Yeah. So I'm gonna actually push it over to you, Kelly.
Okay.
Why do you think it's so important to have SMART goals and not just have a generic, I'm gonna do this thing?
Yeah. I'm going to say, I think it makes sense to have SMART goals because I think the more specific and measurable and all those things, the A's, the R's, the T's, I think the more attainable it really is because it's almost like setting milestone achievements, I guess you could say, or benchmarks along the way.
Sure.
And you can't really measure the success of a goal if you're not using some guide rails.
Right.
So that would be my,
Yeah.
because otherwise, I mean, I could say, okay, well, I want to lose 20 pounds next year. But if I don't say, like, if I don't break it down into some bite-sized chunks,
Right.
I can't, how am I really going to do it? How am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? What are my benchmark goals, to get there? So that's my answer.
And we did that with our trip coming up. We knew we planned for it a year ago, and we knew that we didn't want to put any of it on a credit card. And that, because it was something that we really wanted, it made it so much easier. So we knew what it was. We had it in writing. We knew how much it was going to be. And it just made it easy to give up some of those little things that we may not have necessarily needed because we really wanted this trip. So in following those SMART guidelines, it just fell into place. There was a timeline. We knew exactly how long it was going to take to save it, and it worked wonderfully.
Sure. And I think people get intimidated sometimes when you say SMART goals. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to write all this down and do a flow chart and do all this stuff. Not necessarily. Really, I just tell people to think about it. Is this a goal or is this a SMART goal?
Yeah, because I do think some people can get overwhelmed with the red tape. They feel like they have to, that's me. That's probably why I'm not as intentional with some of those things, because I think it's a lot to have to think about to wrap your head around these rules that you're setting for yourself, or that you're having to do it, put it in a box, and follow this guideline. And that's really tough for someone with my personality who appreciates the flexibility, the freedom, and like buying the shoes when you want to buy the shoes. Like, I don't want to have that constraint. And so I think people usually just go, oh, well, I'm not going to do that at all because that's not fun. You know what I mean? But again, I always think it's tied back to how badly do you want what you say you want. And I don't mean the shoes. I mean the goals that you have set. Like, how badly do you want to be debt free, or how badly do you want to increase your credit score? How badly do you want to save money for ABC things,
So I'll give a very personal example. We actually, people in this room convinced me, instead of buying a new house, we're actually going to extend our current home and add a bedroom. And so that's going to cost money. And so we have to
I didn't realize that you guys had decided to do that.
We did.
That's good to hear.
We did.
Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you.
Sometimes making the decisions after that. Doesn't it
was,
feel good?
It was tough.
Yeah.
But it does feel really good.
Good.
But that's going to cost money, obviously. It's going to cost a lot of money. And so there are places that we have to cut back now to prepare for that, because full transparency, our DTI is probably too high right now. And so we're going to have to pay down some of this other debt in order to make that achievable, to get the loan necessary to make this happen. So we have to make some very specific, measurable goals now in order to accomplish what we're trying to do in the next year or so.
It's good.
Yeah. Another point I wanted to make on that real quick was setting up smaller milestones that you can hit along the way. So, for example, if your goal was to lose, you said 20 pounds, whatever, set up little goals that you can hit along the way that can feel good and give you that positive reinforcement as you accomplish your bigger goal. So.
Yep. Because then you get a win, you know, it's kind of like, believe it or not, I ran track in high school.
I do believe
I was
that,
a lot
actually.
more fit back then. But when you're doing the mile run, okay, it's 4 times around the lap, 4 laps around the football field or the track. You know, it's like you run that one lap and you're like, okay, I only have 3 more to go. So it motivates you. And instead of tiring you, it's like, you know, you see the progress that you're making. You're like, by the time you get to your 3rd lap, you're like, I only have 1 more lap left. I can do this.
Right.
Right. And so you find that momentum and that you're building off of to see it through. And so I love setting those milestone goals. We did that a lot with our members that we're doing financial counseling with, because I think it's important that you have a win to celebrate.
Exactly.
Because if you have a goal that's too far out, or you don't have little milestone measurements to get you there, it can get really discouraging, because you're like, oh my gosh, when are we going to see a difference? It's like, when are we going to start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel?
It's very discouraging if you don't have that.
Yes, if you don't set some milestone goals, it's almost detrimental, I think, to the success of the whole goal in general.
Yeah, and if you ever do credit counseling or financial counseling, they'll mention the snowball method of paying off your debts versus the other method that's blank in my mind right now.
Avalanche.
There you go, the avalanche. And,
you're welcome.
Thank you.
I personally like the avalanche method.
See, and I love the snowball method.
The avalanche
My
makes
husband
more,
likes snowball.
I like the little wins.
Yeah.
the avalanche makes more financial sense, right? It makes more mathematical sense.
Sure.
But the snowball gives you those little
Timeline.
wins, right?
Yeah.
And so
And you know, those little timeline, those are those little incentive things to just kind of keep you moving, because you get one paid off and you're like, yay, it's done. Sometimes even now I'll pull it up, just going, it's paid off.
Yeah.
And I go to the next one. And so I need those little wins.
Yeah. Most people like that
Yeah.
method.
Yeah.
It tends to be the most common, for sure.
I'm gonna go back for a second about being athletic. So I'm gonna talk about Kelly for a second.
Yeah.
Every time I get up, Kelly comments, "Are you okay?" And
In the last couple days.
So on a couple of days ago, my son challenged me to basketball. Right, he's 10, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get out here, and not knowing there are gonna be a bunch of kids out there playing basketball, half my age, if not more. And so I'm out there trying to play, and the first time I jumped, my knee popped, but I couldn't say anything.
Just wait till it pops and you haven't even moved off the couch.
You guys, that's funny. But yeah, he got up out of his chair the other day and he was like, you know, old man walking across the room. I was like, are you okay? And, oh man, I couldn't. He was like, yeah, I played basketball with my son and some kids last night. I was like, oh, I feel your pain. My husband can relate. I'm like, you're too young for that, but that's funny.
It happens.
It keeps us young. Maybe
Exactly.
it just shows you too. Maybe if I can do that more often, I can build some endurance.
That's what I keep saying.
Maybe
Yeah,
beat some of these kids on the field or on the court.
Exactly.
That's
I just
funny.
got to keep moving.
That's funny.
I just got a visual of you popping your knee.
I'm telling you, the first time
Oh,
I jumped to get a rebound, I heard the pop. I was like, ooh. And
Like
this-
But you kept on going, didn't you?
kept on going.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So
Celebrate our wins
yep,
here.
celebrate our wins. Yep.
I won the game, by the way, just to let y'all know.
Those poor kids.
So that leads to, if you make a mistake and you mess up on your budgeting, or you mess up on your
a little bit.
repayment plan, or
Right.
it hurts a little bit, just keep on going.
That's right.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'll
Because
be
you'll
all
be
right.
like Andre.
Just soak in the bath for about 2 hours afterwards, and you'll be okay.
Epsom salt. You're good to go.
All right, so let's talk about, and I know it sounds like a broken record, guys, but we have to talk about the B word, about budgeting. Because when you set your goals, you have to be able to achieve that goal. And you have to have a way to achieve that goal, a roadmap,
Right.
a plan. And so how do you think, if your budget, I'm going to throw it to you,
Okay.
Kelly, to start. If, let's say, you tried the whole budget thing in 2024, it was unsuccessful. What are some, what do you think, what are some encouraging words or something that you can say to help people move on in 2025?
So that was last year. Don't look back, look forward. It's You know, you look back to see things that you could have done differently. You move forward with a new plan for the new year. So you look back to see what you were spending your money on, but you look forward to see what you can do differently this year that's going to make a difference in your life. Because we've all been in that position before. Don't dwell on the past, move forward.
Right.
Yeah. Just
One thing Kelly Walter says a lot that I took to heart is give yourself grace.
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to ask me so I could say that. But
Go ahead.
I'm glad. No, please. I love that you literally took it right out of my head.
I love that saying so much, and I hadn't heard it until you taught a workshop one day. Giving yourself grace is just so important because you're going to stumble. Things happen. It happens. Things get in the way. Things throw you off your game. And giving yourself grace is just so important because you can't be thrown off by things like that if you're going to move forward.
You know, and I think too, if you're in this with a partner, giving them some grace too. I'm not
Right.
saying, you know, be completely, you know, easy on them or whatever. I mean, there's gotta be some tough love and accountability when it comes to that stuff, but we're human.
and change is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to give yourself the grace to
Celebrate those wins. And
Yeah.
usually it's not, if you realize that you haven't met a goal, I always say, don't change the goal, change the date.
Right.
So most people either throw the goal out altogether and go,
Sure.
well, that didn't work for me in 24, so I'm not even going to try that in 25.
That's right.
So I say, no, let's keep the goal. Let's just set some realistic timelines for us to accomplish that goal so that we can get those wins
Right.
for sure.
We've been buying a new car for the past 3 years.
Should be paid off about now,
Well,
right?
we keep saying we're going to buy a new car. We replaced one of our cars a couple of years ago, so it's time to replace the other car. And things just keep happening, and it just keeps getting pushed back and pushed back. That's okay. We
but
still
your
have
car
that
is
goal.
good, right?
It's
It
fully
gets you
functional.
from
It
point
gets-
A to point B. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do think you know, when you're going through these the times of the year where you're reflecting and looking ahead, like you really have to ask yourself your wants versus your needs. I mean, we pound in the idea of the 50-30-20 all the time when we're talking and when we're counseling with folks.
Mhm.
You know, is this a want or is this a need?
For sure.
And it is really important that you're honest with yourself about that and that
Yeah.
you're realistic about it so that you don't find yourself at a fork in the road or living in regret.
For sure.
Going, man, I wish I would have. Or if I hadn't have done this,
Mhm.
we would have been able to do that, you know? So
Yeah, and when you're making those decisions, I'll use our car for example. So we now in this season, because my wife is very type A personality, she likes data and metrics and stuff, and so we've actually looked at how much we've paid in repairs on her car because hers is the one
try
that
to
needs be replaced.
justify.
Yeah, so it's like, is it time? Is it a necessity right now for us to replace this vehicle? Are we good? Is the repair cost worth just hanging on to it for a little while longer?
Yeah, I like that you're looking at it in a practical, like data driven.
Don't say me. It's not me. It's my wife.
Not to get
It's
too,
not-
yeah. But I mean, like sometimes, usually most of our financial decisions are driven by emotion.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated with this car, or it's a piece of junk, or I'm tired of taking it to the shop. And then we start buying into lies like, I wouldn't have this problem if I had something newer. And again,
Yeah.
if you want to have a new car, fine, have a new, like
And you
we're
can
not
afford
saying,
to have a
we're
new
not
car,
saying that
right.
if it's a want, you shouldn't have it.
Right.
If you want to get a new car, I know people who always have a new car. They always have a car payment and they're okay with that. And it fits within their budget.
Mhm.
Do that. Like
Mhm.
live that life. Like
Yep.
that's okay. Just be honest with yourself. And I like that you guys are going, well, like at what point do we justify,
Right.
you know, that change? For you, it sounds like that's important to you.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's important that our members also think that way, you know, or begin to think that way if they're not already.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But not to feel bad if they want it, but they can.
Exactly. So
No shame.
Exactly. It's if you want something and it's within your means, then I think that's what you are getting to. Then you can definitely do
the key words there are if it's within your means.
it. Mhm.
So because we all want stuff.
Yeah.
We're like a little kid at Christmas when you see all those commercials and see all the little magazines come. When we see a new car, I know for me, I went for about 2 years without a car payment. Part of me really needed a new car because I needed the room.
Yeah.
Part of me just really wanted that
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
I remember when you
Yeah.
told me I got a new car, you immediately went into like, hopefully I'm not like,
No, it's
telling
okay. Go
you,
ahead.
but you immediately went into like these, well, because like
Yes.
you were like justifying, and I go, Kelly, You don't owe me any
Yeah, I don't,
explanation.
yeah.
I'm happy for
Yeah.
you. You're thrilled about this. I
Yeah.
love your car.
Yeah.
I know
love you
people
guys
who
too.
drive the same type of car you, and I love that, like, you can fit we haul
Okay.
around a lot
I
of
can
stuff,
fit
y'all.
so much stuff.
Kelly needed
I
that.
can fit a 5-foot table in my car.
Yes, we can fit so many things in our cars for the community
Yes.
events that we do, which is
Yes.
great. But
Y'all
like,
should have seen Kelly
shouldn't feel
stuffing
bad.
all that stuff in her little Camry. She would stuff whatever she needed in the
yeah,
back.
before you got your new car,
Yes.
yeah.
So
Well,
I
and
love
she always, I'll go, while I'm standing by your car, you wouldn't happen to have a blah, 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 would you? She's like, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact, which one would you like? I have 3. I'm like, the Mary Poppins bag of
Yeah.
It
cards.
was exactly
Yeah.
Mary Poppins. Bag.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
I think I'm gonna have to watch that movie I referenced.
You
twice now.
have.
You know, it is my favorite.
It's on your
It's
brain.
my favorite.
Is it?
It's my favorite movie of all time.
So let's dig into budgeting just a little bit more. The 50-30-20 rule. You want to
Oh.
explain?
Yeah.
That's your avenue.
Yeah. So the 50-30-20 rule is just kind of guide rails. It's not a end all to be all that you've got to be within these, but most financial counselors or educators are going to teach these as guide rails. So the first is 50% of your income going towards your necessities, your needs. So think about it as like your major, I can't live without this, right? Roof over your head, food in your belly, transportation, insurance and medical stuff, that sort of stuff. I think where it gets tricky is how do we then, where the 50 that goes to the 30, which is wants, how do I distinguish the difference between wants and needs? Because something might be a want to Kelly, but it might be a necessity to me or vice versa. Like, let's use cell phones as an example. I think cell phones, had you asked me about 50-30-20 years ago, I probably would have said cell phones were, gosh, and maybe even 20s, not far enough. Maybe, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, man, you're an old man now, right? Your knees are breaking.
Oh,
But
man.
I think, do we have to have a cell phone? I think most people are going to go, yeah, I have to have a cell phone now. It's my only means of, like, most people don't even have an actual landline phone in their home anymore.
But throw a
and-
wrinkle in it. Does your kid have to have a cell phone?
Right. I was just about to get to that. Excuse me. Yep. I was just
Jump
about to get to
ahead
that. No. You're, again, it's like, yeah, do your kids have to? Some kids are doing homework on their phones, right? For sadly, this day and age, parents want and need to be very connected with their children, with things that are going on in the world. I want to know where are my kiddos. And also we use apps on the phone that help us as a family. We use like location tracking apps and things
Yeah.
like that. So again, that is a necessity for my family. Now, do we have to have the latest and greatest cell phone? That's where I think that gray area
Right.
is kind of like grows a bit. So like, yes, I have to have a cell phone, but do I have to have the latest model that comes out of my favorite brand, right? That comes out. That's where families need to ask themselves. And again, it's different for all of us. It's okay if Andre has one item on his necessities list and I have it on my wants list. There's no black and white here. It's not like every family has to do that. What's important is that you have the conversation and you put everything in a category.
Exactly.
Just pick one.
Exactly.
And then you operate your budget based on what you feel good about in that. And then you go with it and stick with it. That's it. So then the 20,
No, go ahead.
go ahead.
All I was going to say was if we all did our budget, each of ours would look different. If you and Tim did your budget, he would have things in different.
Yeah, I was
categories than
having
you
a
would.
conversation with another, it came up in another meeting that we had internally, and a coworker of ours said something about a budget. And I go, well, do you have a budget? She's like, yeah, I have a budget. And I was like, okay, well, how do you budget? I was just curious. And then I was like, well, that's not really a budget. Like, going back and saying, a budget is where you give a job to every dollar before you actually get it in your account. That's a budget. A budget isn't, again, I guess even budgeting can look different. It's more like a spending plan. It's an actionable spending plan is really what it is. It's where you would, again, intentional, there's that word, where you intentionally, excuse me, let me pause that. But it's where you intentionally are, planning to spend your money before it even hits your account. So let me jump to the 20%. So the other 20% is supposed to be on debt repayment and savings. Well, most people we're finding they're spending 70, 80% on their needs. So if your 50% that you're supposed to be on needs is at 70%, that now means that the rest of your 50% has now gone to 30%. Y'all with me?
Your math isn't.
So you got to change some things around. And so that's where it's like, all right, well, if my 50% is over 50%, what do I do? Do I need more income to keep what I have? Or do I take a look at what I'm already using and do I make changes?
Right.
We're not saying go find another place to rent or sell your home and go get another mortgage. But for some people, that's what they do. And again, it's all tied to your goals. How badly do you want what you say that you want? What are you willing to change, or what do you need to do or change in order to accomplish it? So in a nutshell, that's your 50-30.
And we're not even telling you to unsubscribe to Netflix, but maybe there's another option on Netflix. Maybe you do the commercial plan instead of the full-blown everything. So, I mean, maybe save little money here and there instead of having to sacrifice the whole thing. I wanted to dig into a little bit of what's called zero-based budgeting, which is fun way of the non-fun way of saying make every dollar count. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
I can. I will say that I don't do this
Sure.
because that is a difficult thing for me. But zero-based budgeting is where every single dollar that comes into your account is for something. So it's either to pay your bills, it's to put in savings. Every dollar has something attached to it. So you don't have, if you do it the right way, if you've got your budget done and you've got all your money going to those things, you don't have money left over. It's all geared towards something.
Sure. Yeah.
So I have a hard time with that.
It's
I
hard.
tried that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that didn't work. And I like to, because, well, kind of does, because I have a little fun pocket right there. So I have a section that is just fun money. So it's not for a bill. It's not for something specific. It's for me when I want to go, maybe get something for the grandkids, maybe.
Sure.
Or whatever. And I don't have to explain that, because to me, if I didn't have that, budgeting would not be a success for me, because I have to have that fun stuff.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you have to have coffee, if it fits into your budget, into that, and you know that there's no way that you can do without it, then by all means do it if you can afford to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I always encourage people to budget fun into their budgets, because we don't want to be miserable. We don't want anybody to be miserable. Live your life, do fun things. Just make sure it makes sense mathematically.
I think where it gets difficult for people is when they're so overstretched with the debt. You know, I think that's where, you know, other financial counselors or experts in the industry will say, you know, you've been having fun for the past 12 months or 24 months or 10 years. It's time to not have fun for a short period of time to get yourself back on track.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do.
But I think what you're talking about is almost kind of like those little things. So like maybe it's when I pay off the card, that one card, then we celebrate. So maybe it's we'll go out to eat or splurge on that thing, you know. And I think what you're saying is just budget for that, though. Don't go put it back on the credit card, you know.
Exactly.
Right.
But I think the problem is a lot of times people, you know, can go, let's go back to the deserve thing. Not to kind of pick on I deserve to have those shoes, but I think we oftentimes can, again, buy into this story that we deserve because we work hard or because whatever, that we deserve to have something. But, and yes, we do. We work hard, but at the same time, none of us really deserve anything that we have. It's just, you know, it's kind of like, you know, so I think we got to be real careful. Like, when we're having fun, that it's still realistic and smart, like those goals.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. You have to make an assessment of your situation. Where are you at in life? Are you able to do that where it makes sense, right? So I think that's what you're saying. It's
Just be careful. Just be smart about it.
Absolutely. That is a good segue into our dealing with debt. You may be going into 2025 with a lot of debt. You may be feeling overwhelmed, feeling like the weight of the debt is just too much for you. So making a plan on how you're going to maybe crawl out of that hole, or even getting the help you need to crawl out of that hole is really going to be crucial, especially at the beginning of the year, because you want to build that momentum going in. We mentioned a little bit about the different methods of paying off debt. And so because Kelly, you said you really like the avalanche method. Do you want to explain the avalanche method?
So the avalanche method is where you tackle your debt that has the higher interest rates first. So it's more money in your pocket sooner versus the snowball method, which is the lowest payment or the lowest balance, whichever one. Usually they're parallel, but not always. You can have a lower balance that has a higher minimum payment. So it's really about about that. So avalanche method is more beneficial to people who want to save more money in the long run. However, when you compare the two side by side and do the math, it's really not that much.
Right.
Unless you have like hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, right?
And some
But
people
right
do.
now I'm noticing that the amount of savings, because rates have been higher, that the avalanche method is even more of, in my opinion, more of a benefit because rates are so high. So why wouldn't you put more money towards the debts that are going to have a higher compounding interest over time? Again, that's where the banker in me is kind of thinking, however, when you do that, sometimes the ones with the higher debt might also carry the higher balance. So it might take longer to pay that one off, which is again why a lot of people don't really like it, because it might take a little longer for me to get that win. It might take me 2 years to get my first win instead of 6 months, so to speak.
It also forces people to be a bit more granular in how they look at their debt. And some people are not comfortable with that, is actually looking at the contracts or calling up your bank or whoever it is and seeing what is my interest rate. Because I'm surprised to know a lot of people don't know what their interest rates are on a lot of their things. That kind of blows my mind. But then again, I am a banker and I've been in this world for so long. I kind of take that for granted, that I pay attention to my interest rates. And some people don't. Some people buy a car and they don't know what their interest rate is.
Yeah, because again, it's usually driven by emotion. Again, it's like, I need the new car. I want to get out of here. I'm tired of being in the dealership all day. Show me where I sign. I'll deal with that later.
I'm going to tell a really quick story. I actually was in a dealership waiting to do something, and I was listening to the people at the table, and the lady said, I don't care what my interest rate is, as long as my payment is under $1,000.
That's
and
wild to me.
How crazy is that? And she meant it.
Is she sleeping out of her car?
Yeah,
just kidding.
right.
I know.
And that was 10 years ago. So I mean,
Wow.
and her payment was $989 for 84 months.
And who knows what?
And who knows what the interest rate was? And it didn't matter to her. And for a lot of people, when you walk into a dealership, they'll say, "Well, what do you want your payment to be?"
Yeah,
Not
right,
really
right. Because most people are payment thinkers.
That's why before you go and shop, you need to find out what's your interest rate going to be. Come to your credit union, apply for the loan, and find out what your interest rate is going to be, and then think about it. Do I really need that car if my interest rate is going to be double what it is now on my current car? There's a lot of things to consider. Yes, we all want those things, but do we need it?
Yeah, I had a young lady come in my office one day when I was a lender, crying because she wanted to get she wanted to be refinanced. She was like 18, 19, something like that. She needed a refinance because she's like, these payments are killing me. I was like, well, okay, let me look at your stuff. Let me see what your interest rate is. Your interest rate was 28% on a vehicle. And I'm like, how did you even get this loan? And so she just explained she did it through the dealership. She just really needed a car. She got a cosigner, all this stuff. And it was like, well, I mean, can't really do anything for you. It was a very sad situation. But I do encourage people to pay attention to those interest rates because they really do have an effect on your payments and, the future of the loan.
Well, and the good thing is if you're somebody who is in that situation, like the number you just mentioned, eventually there is a plan that you can, like when you make good. So 40% of your credit score today is made up of the most recent 12 months of activity. So if you've got 12 months of on-time payments, right, no late pays, you're paying that debt down, consistent with it, you are a really great candidate for refinancing.
Absolutely.
And if you could refinance it with the same remaining term or less and lower that interest rate, you pay that baby off faster, right? So while you might not have been able to do anything for right then, the beautiful thing is, and I know you because you're a coach, probably showed her how to work towards it. And I think that's, people go, oh man, I can't qualify for it, so I'm just stuck. And then they never go back and do it again, or take a look at it. So I say always kind of stop and reevaluate 6 months, 12 months down the road.
For sure. And you make a really good point, advocating for yourself, because you may run into somebody who says, well, I can't do anything to help you. Well, what can I do to make this happen or to improve my situation? Or what do I need to do in order to refinance in the future or whatever?
I'm working with a few people right now. That's what we're aiming to do in the first of the year. Is we've been working really hard this year on making on-time payments so that we can refinance.
You do yourself a disservice if you don't ask that question.
For sure.
Like a no shouldn't be a no. It should be a not yet, but if you do this, this, and this, it's going to be a yes.
Yeah, and you
Or
should be
yes.
rewarded for that hard work that
Absolutely.
you've done over the last however many months of that loan. You should be rewarded for that. You do deserve that. You've worked hard
Absolutely.
for it. Yeah.
Let's before we wrap up, I do want to get into savings. So not only should you have a debt repayment plan going into the new year, but you should also have a savings plan. It's really important to be able to put something away for the future, whether it be for emergencies or it be for whatever goals you may want to achieve. So Kelly, what's a good strategy for saving, just starting out the new year?
So pay yourself first. Put yourself first and pay yourself first. Don't try and put a certain amount of money, whatever that looks like for you. If you can put $20 aside a week or a paycheck, put that aside. If you can afford to put $100, whatever you can afford to put aside, put that aside first. Consider that one of your bills that has to be paid, because you deserve to pay yourself first, to have that money either for an emergency, because emergencies happen. I think the average American couldn't afford, is it $400 emergency?
Actually, the average American cannot afford a 1,000.
1,000.
Only about 30%
can afford
$1,000 expense right now, emergency right now. So
without going
70%
into debt.
right
without going
putting
into
it on
debt.
their credit card, so they don't have that money.
That cash flow.
And something like that can happen so fast. A tire, if you have a hole in your tire, it's no longer a $80 tire. It's a couple $100 tire.
Yeah.
Mine's $280, just FYI.
And
My-
so
Did you discover that recently? Something
No,
happened?
a little while ago, but Dave's tire on his truck was last year, and it was $480
for one tire.
for one tire. And he doesn't have fancy tires.
yeah,
But so if
yeah.
you don't have that money set aside in an emergency fund, then that's going to be money that you have to put on your credit card, or if you have available credit on your card, and then you're going to be paying interest on it. So that $450 or $480 expense, if you can't pay it off right away, it's going to just snowball into
Yeah.
more and more and more.
fender benders have gotten more expensive. My dad manages an auto shop, and because there are so many sensors in vehicles now, if you get into a fender bender, you could be talking about thousands of dollars worth of repairs because you
Bumper's
have to
not just a
replace
bumper
those
anymore.
sensors.
No, it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So making sure that you're paying yourself first and putting that as a priority, not as an afterthought, not like, oh, I have $20 left after I got my nails done, I'll put it aside for savings. Make it one of your top priorities.
Yeah. So, Kelly, tax season is coming up, and people are going to start to get these returns, or they may even owe taxes. What are some strategies in the new year to make plans for that money instead of just, spending it on a whim or doing whatever?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, just asking the question is the first start.
Mhm.
So asking yourself, what do we want to do with our refund? What are we estimating it will be? You can actually go to the irs.gov, and it's kind of a lengthy process. It takes about 15 minutes to go through it all, but you can actually kind of calculate what your return might be and what your withholding should be throughout the year in order to find out, I guess, what's the biggest bang for your buck. I think some people love having their tax return. I went through a season of life where I loved tax return, and then it hit me one day, and maybe it was things I was reading. I'm like, why would I want to get more back? Why would I not want to just pay less throughout the year?
Yeah,
But it's really, really hard to figure that out.
Yeah.
And then if you do get bumped into a different tax bracket and you estimated it incorrectly, then you would end up
Exactly.
in the category where you do have to pay back. And that is never fun. So I think families just need to ask, when we do, how much do we think we're going to get based on everything happening in the economy? And, I know that political years, things change sometimes. So there's probably some changes coming as well. At the end of the year, there's usually some changes to that. And then what is our family going to do with it? And, again, no shame in the game. Just figure it out and do what you said you were going to do.
Mhm.
And if something happens between now and then, giving yourself grace and realizing that goal might need to change a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Because you might say, we're going to use it to put a down payment on a car. Okay. Well, something might happen between now and April 16th or whenever you file your taxes, and you might have to do something else. So being
our
flexible.
property taxes went up by $1,000, so we have to figure out how
I
we're
think-
going to make that happen.
I think one thing a lot of people learned last year, this year, is that insurance went up for most of
Mhm.
us
Mhm.
in our part of the country.
Yep.
I think
Sure did.
because we've had a lot of hurricanes and a lot of
Mhm.
natural disasters, right? And the insurance companies, which is, I'm not going to get political, but go write a letter or talk to your congressmen and women about that, because there's got to be a cap on how much it can increase over time.
Yeah.
Because it's hurting us
It
as
is.
citizens, and I think a lot of people, that was a big, I think that's one of the, and why are not enough people are talking about that.
For sure.
It's like, how do I make room for that now in my budget?
Exactly.
It's affecting, how much I can't not pay that, so
Yeah.
anyways, not to get down that rabbit trail.
No,
but
that's fine, because it used to be you could count on your mortgage being relatively stable
Mhm.
within the lifetime of you living there, and now we have to really think about how much is this going to increase? Is it going to increase? Am I going to get dropped? Like what's going to happen? And so those are all financial things that we have to think about.
Yeah, and sadly,
Here in
that's
Florida.
only something that can change during one period of you can't change it in the middle of the year.
Right.
It has to be something that you plan for at the beginning of the year, and then you're stuck with that number the whole year. And so you've got, right now is the time to be making those changes, folks. So
Yeah,
Take
you
a look
can
at
shop around. Shop around for insurance. I mean, you may not get a better deal. I don't know, but you won't. The answer will be no unless you're shopping around.
Right.
You can't do anything about property tax. I mean, property tax is property tax,
Absolutely.
but you have the opportunity to help your budget by shopping around for car insurance, homeowners insurance, all the things.
anything else you pay for.
Anything that you pay for, shop around. If it's not the only game in town, like your electric, you can't shop around for electric most of the time.
Yeah.
But anything you can shop around for, shop around
That's
and
a
see if
really
you can get a
good
better
point.
deal.
That's a really good point, especially at the beginning of the year, to take an assessment of all these things that you pay for. Even if it's like a streaming service or something like that, or whatever it may be, am I getting the best deal? Because I will admit, I don't pay attention to that kind of thing. The price could have gone down because we realized our phone bill, we could have been saving $50 a month on our phone bill just because the plans have changed over time.
Of course, they're not going to call you and tell you,
No.
"Oh, well, hey,
Yeah.
Mr. Harris, did you know that you can pay $50 less? That's less money we would
Exactly.
make off of you." They're not going to proactively do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Internet, all those things. So really take a look at those things and see, is there a way I can save money?
Because it all adds up.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's usually when I'm doing with my financial counseling members, I usually tell people that's the purpose of our budgeting. It's not necessarily, it's two parts. It is to intentionally plan for every dollar you are going to spend that you're going to make. But the other side of it is that it really reveals your spending habits.
Mhm. Yeah.
It really reveals your ideals about money. It helps you navigate those decisions about what is a want versus what is a need.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how many people, when you see it on paper and you look at the number, like oftentimes I'll go, okay, well, like the first assignment before we even do a budget is go back and let's do a 3-month assessment on an average of how much you spend in each of these categories.
Mhm.
Then with that number, I ask them, does that number sound high to you? Does that number sound low to you? Are you good with that number? And some people go, well, I thought we spent more. Some people may go, I didn't realize we spent that much money eating out. So like it reveals your habits that you otherwise can't control or can't calculate or quantify because you're just living day to day.
Yeah.
You're not keeping, tally of it. And so when you look at it and you go, wow, it's very telling. And then you can decide if you're comfortable with that number, fine. Keep it on. Right. But if you don't like the number, make a change.
Sure. And people are hesitant to do financial counseling a lot of times because they think we're going to judge you for your spending habits. But really, it's for you to judge yourself. We really want you to take a look in the mirror and see, does this make sense? Is what I'm doing making sense?
And does it match what I say I want?
Right. Exactly.
Let's be, are we being realistic?
Yeah. So to wrap things up, because we're at time, we talked about reflecting on the last year's goals without having any guilt. I don't want you to be ashamed. I don't want you to feel guilty, but really think about how you spent money throughout 2024 and what that looks like. We want you to set fun, achievable money goals. We want you to create a budget that works for you. Just because it works, we talked about that earlier, just because it works for somebody else doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. There are all kinds of different ways to create a budget. There's all kinds of different forms and metrics and things like that. Do what works for you and what you're comfortable with. And then start with small savings and goals and really look at and tackle your debt. So any last words?
I just want to throw out there, we have a great budget on our website at envisioncu.com.
Actually, just email us for it.
Just email us.
Yep,
for
the
it.
form is not actually accessible on the site, but because we'd love to chat with you about, helping you with that. But if you'd like a copy of that, it is a fillable PDF. Just email us at community@envisioncu.com.
It's a wonderful little thing. Or you can just use, I know Andre is very techie. He uses an app for his. I write mine down on paper
And
and it works.
Yeah, and we also have a debt snowball and avalanche spreadsheet that we use as well, that's in Excel format, which is so all those resources are available.
So use what works best for you.
For free. Those resources are free. You don't have to, you have to pay for those.
And I will say, you mentioned earlier, and this is a great kind of commercial, I guess you could say, for our January MoneyWise Wednesday topic is going to be on saving versus spending. How do I save when I have other things that I'm paying for? And when do I save? So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that topic in January, because right now we are finding that many members don't have money to save. And so we don't necessarily want to reiterate all this budgeting stuff, because budgeting is about how do you find ways to free up money to do those things. But we'll talk about kind of the struggles or the battles with, should I even save while I have debt to pay off? How do I figure out what those priorities are? So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
That's going to be really interesting.
It's going to be a great topic. I'm excited about it.
Well, thank you guys for joining us for another MoneyWise Wednesdays. We thank you so much for being here. We ask that you check out our resources at envisioncu.com. And for Andre, this is us signing out.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We're Kelly and Kelly.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy
oh, my
New
goodness.
Year. Yes.
We'll see you guys next year.
See you next year.
Bye.